Madden 25. Of course, Madden 25 has allowed us to use the team builder functionality, a thing that a lot of us are grateful for, finally being able to create your team. So this is just one of many ideas. You can find a bunch of ideas here on YouTube, of course, but just giving you an idea of what some of the teams are out there. Now, real quick, I want to let you know you'll see things like the Steelers are still here. The more team builders you have in a franchise, the slower the franchise will run when you're going to start the franchise or going into or out of a particular game, because each time the system needs to seem to load all of the team builder teams. So if you go with a 32 team builder, you may you may have to wait 4 to 5 minutes or something ridiculous in between, switching screens. So to speed it up a little bit, I just decided to leave some of the teams in here, such as the Steelers, and you'll see in a minute. But basically, the idea for this and the roster that I made in quotes, the alumni roster. I did not create any players, but simply move them across teams according to what college they went to. So basically, the idea here is that well, we'll just go through the teams. So you see the Virginia Beach Vipers here. They're going to represent the state of Virginia and also include in their pipeline West Virginia. So if you went to a college in West Virginia or Virginia, then you will be on this team. Of course, the big highlights are University of West Virginia, Virginia Cavaliers, and the Virginia Tech. But there's also, smaller schools such as Marshall and things that will be have players in there. There you see some of the best players. We won't go through the names, but you can see them. Their rankings, I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm not sure if that's based off 2023 or, the players that are on the team. But I think it is the players on the team, because you'll see when we get to the teams that I expect to be very good, where they rank. So anyways, just take a look at the teams. Obviously, the Virginia Beach Vipers are from the Team Builder community. I did not create any of these teams. These are all on Team Builder. Salt Lake City, Utah. You will see that a little bit too. This one, Virginia Beach Vipers, this person was able to figure out the website, but the Team Builder website is a little bit confusing. So you'll see sometimes this does say Salt Lake City, Utah. Sometimes you'll just see it say Salt Lake City, because it's a little bit confusing how to get the city name and the team name in the right place, but also have them play in the right state. So anyways, you just have to bear with the stats. But this is the Salt Lake City, of course, in Utah. And the team name is the Utah Lobos. So there they are. You see Fred Warner, of course, from there. It says coverage number 2, so Utah must have a bunch of defensive backs. You can also see at the bottom, this is, of course, the roster, and how many X factors and things they have. So you see more than Virginia had. But continuing through the list, Tennessee Titans. Tennessee, one of the teams I decided to keep because Tennessee's right in the name. So, of course, this is colleges from Tennessee. Houston Texans. So Texas, there's some states that there's some people that, such as this, have to be Virginia and West Virginia to get a full team. Then Utah is just Utah, Tennessee's just Tennessee. But here in Texas, if we put all the people from colleges in Texas, that team would be way too good, and we probably wouldn't get to 32 teams. So Texas, Florida, California, and Alabama are split into 2 teams. So this is the first one, Houston Texans. That will be the school's East Texas. Now it's not split right down the middle. This team is East Texas, about 1/4 or 1/5 of Texas, and then West Texas team will be all the rest of the state, because the East Texas, of course, has the most prominent colleges. So, of course, Houston, Texas will include University of Houston, also Texas A&M. There's some other ones there that I can't remember. You'll see if you look through the roster, of course. Miles Garrett at 99, so definitely a good team there. 2 X Factors. No superstars, but you see pretty good ratings. They actually fit under the salary cap. Some of these teams do not. So if you do this exact idea, you have to turn salary cap off or just deal with cutting some good players. Then you got the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they are going to represent the state of Pennsylvania. Now, I could have. There are a lot of college teams out there, so you could just download like Penn State, for instance. But since this team is much more diverse, in other words, it's less than 50% coming from one particular college. You got Pittsburgh, you got Penn State. Villanova, I think only has like one guy, but they're in there. Temple's got 10 players or so. So a bunch of schools go into Pennsylvania, so we went with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, you could do Philadelphia Eagles as well because that's in Pennsylvania, but we decided to go with Pittsburgh. Here's the South Carolina Raccoons. So South Carolina, you see, of course, mostly represented by Clemson and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Those are your two big schools, but there are some other South Carolina schools that make up the roster there. See some three different numbers in green, two X Factors, four superstars. Definitely a pretty solid team from South Carolina. Seattle Seahawks, that will represent Washington. Surprisingly, I did not see a purple and gold team from Washington. So as far as picking, you do whatever you want, but you can go off colors. Washington, the University of Washington, of course, the most represented here, but there is Cooper Kupp, their highest paid player from East Washington. And then, of course, there's Washington State and some other schools up there. Here's the other Texas team, San Antonio Lone Stars. So that is your non-East Texas teams, or what we're calling them West Texas, but it's really from. If you look at the logo there on Lone Stars, where the A is, it's about the edge, the left edge of the A, and everything to the left. So the other team, the Houston Texans, are only from the A to the right. So most of the state is in this team. Of course, Patrick Mahomes, the big draw there. He is the only X factor, but they have three superstars. California, another one of the states that are split. We left both of those teams the same. You'll see the Rams, they have 49ers. Los Angeles Rams are the Southern California team. So UCLA and USC, as well as San Diego and San Diego State, are the big draws there. The Port Allen. So that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes you'll see it like that, but they're actually the Louisianans. Port Allen, Louisianans. Now you see the symbol, very much like the Saints. Could have left them the New Orleans Saints, but I liked the uniforms, the color, and just the Mardi Gras atmosphere of the way the uniforms and stadium and everything looks. So we went ahead and did that. You could, of course, save time in between menu switching by keeping them the Saints. But they're definitely a good team. You can see by the salary cap. They have very good players. A 4X factor salary cap, 26 million over already. Three top four rankings. Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow. I mean, you got everything you want on offense. All kinds of receivers, and Joe Burrow's your quarterback. Pretty decent running backs as well. And deep, so even with injuries, they're going to be great on offense, and they're pretty solid on defense as well. The New England Patriots. Okay, so this is a perfect team to leave as New England, because if you just pick Massachusetts, you can get the closest, but if you just pick like Connecticut or Maine or something, you're getting nowhere near a full team. So even when you put them all together, then you do get a full team, but not very deep. So they hopefully will avoid injuries, but they have, of course, the New England states. So it's Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Maine forming that team. See some low rankings, 32nd in passing. Their quarterback is from Brown University. I can't even remember his name right now. EJ something. Can't think of his last name, but yeah, they are very. They have some good blockers. They have a good fullback, of course. They have some good offensive linemen and some good players here and there, but probably on the lower end of the teams. Carolina Panthers, we left as to represent North Carolina. First of all, one of their uniform options does get bring in some colors, from the Tar Heels. Of course, not exactly, but I didn't want to download the Tar Heels because this is much more than just North Carolina. This is NC State, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Duke's in there. A bunch of teams represent North Carolina, and they're a pretty good team. Definitely deep, not high end caliber though. The one X factor, no superstar, is a pretty good team though. Oregon, okay, so that's the Portland, Oregon Ducks. So they're not exactly the Oregon Ducks in every way. There are the exact, NCAA uniform Oregon Ducks out there. This is not that, but it's still called the Oregon Ducks and still represents the colors because most of this roster is from Oregon. Basically the rest of them are from Oregon State. So this is literally, I think, just two colleges. I don't think there's any player on this roster that is not from either University of Oregon or Oregon State. But there you see, pretty good team. No X factors, but plenty of superstars. 80s overall, so pretty balanced team. Oklahoma City Wranglers, that's your state of Oklahoma. You see some very big time green rankings all over the place. They're 24 million in the hole to have this kind of roster. Their offense is off the charts. CD Lamb, Andrews, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield. So they have depth at quarterback, fantastic offensive line, especially at the tackles. Just a very good team overall. We'll see if the Oklahoma Wranglers will be one of the teams to watch. I didn't want to go Sooners or anything because although there are a lot of Oklahoma Sooners on here, there is also Tulsa, Oklahoma State Cowboys, of course. So many teams, many colleges go into this roster. Oxford, Mississippi. This is the Mississippi River Kings. Mississippi, of course, mostly Ole Miss and Mississippi State. And, Dak Prescott leads the team, but a bunch of, you can see four X Factors and four superstars. So a bunch of high end players. Maybe not as much depth as even I believe Tennessee may have more total players on the roster, but this has a lot of high end people. And the funny thing is, well, funny to me. So if you pay attention to just regular statistics of the United States, Mississippi for a long time, I think they may have recently climbed up to 49th, but they've been ranked 50th as far as per capita income and things. The cost of living is also cheaper to make. So it goes in line with salary, but just overall salary in Mississippi, just for the everyday person, ranks pretty low in out of the rest of the states in America. So it's just kind of funny to me that they have all this talent, but you see they still have 36 million left to spend in the salary cap. So somehow, people from the colleges in Mississippi have great ability, but not paid like they are paid from Oklahoma or some of those other states that are way over the cap. But anyways, a very solid team for sure. Detroit Lions, that is, of course, representing Michigan. Look at the difference here. Uh, one X Factor, five superstars, four X Factors, both teams are loaded, but you see Mississippi has 36 million left to spend, whereas Michigan is 40 million over the cap. It's insane. But look at their ends: Crosby and Hutchinson. And then even Gary. So their three defensive ends lead this team. We're gonna have a heck of a defense. Michigan, of course, if Tom Brady was still around, this team would probably be the favorites. But Kirk Cousins is the leader, still not a bad quarterback. Some of these teams are scrambling at some positions, but Michigan seems to have every position fairly covered. And that's the Detroit Lions. Okay, here's the fun one. Kentucky. It's the Kentucky Fried Chicken. When I saw them out there, I just had to do it. Sorry, I forgot the creator's name, but shout out. It is a pretty unique team for sure. Their jerseys, you'll see if we do a game, their jerseys with the KFC logos. The stadium is called the Bucket. Red turf, pretty interesting. A little bit crazy, though, if you want to keep everything on the straight and narrow. Maybe you avoid this team, but very fun. Definitely a good idea and pretty good team as well. Three X Factors, pretty solid team. Not the deepest, but solid. The New York Jets. Now, this team I decided to keep because they're another one of those regional teams. But the Jets, they just fall in because a lot of people call them New Jersey's team. They play in East Rutherford, New Jersey, but their team name is New York. And you guessed it, they are mostly colleges from New Jersey and New York, with Maryland and even Delaware sprinkled in there. Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Bulls. You might recognize them from the USFL, but they are the team representing North Florida. So this is the North Florida schools, which includes both the Florida Gators and the Florida State Seminoles, because they are so. Florida has a little bit more than Florida State, but they're both such big impacts on this team. I did not want to go with either the Gators or the Seminoles because, of course, they're also a rival. So that would be weird to have 30 of your players hate your team name. So they're the Jacksonville Bulls. And since Jacksonville Bulls are a real team, it just seemed like something I had to do. Iowa Barnstormers. This team is unique. Their helmets are cool. Of course, this is a real team, a real indoor football team. You'll see a couple of those in here. But the state of Iowa coming through with some pretty good players. Now, this is all Iowa, no help. They're not getting anyone from Minnesota or anything like that. So Iowa surprised me that they were able to fill up a full roster. You see 8 superstars, so not even a bad roster. Very good college state is Iowa. All right, Muncie, Indiana. This team is also one of the coolest ideas. The Indiana Hot Rods. You'll see their end zones are checker flags, which is absolutely just cool idea. Their turf is a little bit different, not as crazy as the Kentucky Fried Chicken, but a little bit different and really fits the theme for sure. This is the state of Indiana, mostly dominated, of course, by Notre Dame, but also, besides the Fighting Irish, you also have the Boilermakers of Purdue, and of course, Indiana State, and some others there. Georgia. Okay, so they did go Georgia Bulldogs. So what I said before about the Bulls, Florida State and Florida having to coexist. This they did get the logo of Georgia that might make a couple of people on this team upset that are from Georgia Tech, but they are like 80% Georgia Bulldogs, and then the rest of them are just a handful. Like 5 or 6 or less players from each of the other school. Plenty of schools in Georgia that contribute, 4 to 6 players to make up the other 20% of the roster. And then, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs fill in the most. San Francisco 49ers, that's North California. So think Stanford, think California, the Cal Bears. You see Aaron Rodgers there. Fresno State, San Jose State's up here as well. So this is Northern California. Fargo. This is the Fargo Bison, and they represent North Dakota, and that's where the colors really come from, is the University of North Dakota, but they're North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming. So you see Josh Allen, the quarterback there, which really helps their passer rating. Otherwise, if you take Josh Allen off this team, they're near the bottom, but they are still, all these teams seem to be competitive, which will be nice. Over here, you got the Duluth North Stars. So Duluth, of course, is in Minnesota, but very close to the border of Wisconsin. And this represents the Wisconsin-Minnesota alliance, if you will, because neither one of those states can pull off a roster on their own. But if you put them together, and it is almost exactly even between those schools. The Wisconsin Badgers, I think, have 30 players on this roster, and the Minnesota Golden Gophers have 29. And then there's a couple smaller schools in Minnesota that contribute to the roster. There's also 4 people that went to school in Canada. So anyone that went to a college in Canada is going to wind up on this team as well. Miami Dolphins, there's your South Florida team. Of course, University of Miami is the big one there, but also FAU, FIU. Other schools represented down there. First in blocking, so quite interesting there. You'll see Jordan Mailata. Of course, he's from Australia, so he's actually not supposed to be on this team. But when I started the league, they went out there and signed him right away. So what I decided to do, just for me, of course, you do whatever you want. But if you use my roster, he's not on there. He's in the free agents. But when you go to start a franchise, of course, computer teams are going to pick up who they want. So I just let that go. So states that are not, there's one little region that couldn't put a team together. That's the states of Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. So anyone that went to colleges, no schools, are basically free agents. And then, of course, Australia or other foreign schools that are not Canada. They are not on the roster. They're all just free agents, and the computer will do what they will with them. Representing Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas is the Colorado Crush. Of course, you see the logo. It says indoor football. They are a real team from the Indoor Football League, or were a real team, I should say. But yes, that's the states there. Colorado. So you got Colorado Buffalo, of course, Colorado State Rams, Nebraska Cornhuskers, Kansas Jayhawks, Kansas State, of course. So many schools, but they each bring just double digits. So it's very well mixed team. I don't think any one school has contributed more than 25 players, but if you put them all together, you get a team there, and a pretty competitive middle of the pack type team. Cleveland Browns, all that green. This is Ohio, of course. Mostly Ohio State. I did download Ohio State. And it's just because their roster is so big. So there's over 100 players in the NFL that went to schools in Colorado or in Ohio. Ohio State, if you limit it to just them, you would get, I think, 50 something players. So you could probably do a team just from Ohio State. But I wanted to let the other schools in Ohio, they weren't quite big enough to do Ohio State and all other schools in Ohio as a different team, which you'll see in a little bit. They weren't that big, so I just decided to keep them all on one team, call them Ohio, and we'll just leave them as the Cleveland Browns. But there you see four X Factors, five superstars. Quite a good team for sure. But yeah, by leaving Ohio altogether, you see the Cincinnati players get to join. So Sauce Gardner, Travis Kelsey on top of Ohio State's talent. That's pretty ridiculous. Birmingham, Alabama. So this is, well, let's just go to the spoiler here first. Alabama Crimson Tide. They get to keep the name Alabama Crimson Tide because every single one of these players is on Alabama, went to the college of Alabama Crimson Tide. So they have over 75 players, I believe, in the Madden roster that went to the University of Alabama. You see they're almost 100 million in the whole salary cap, but they'll make that up because they're probably the Super Bowl favorites. You see passing and pass rush are the only things that they're not green, and they're absolutely loaded as far as the roster goes. Their ratings are insane. But this is the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, three X Factors, nine superstars. Then all the other schools in Alabama, such as Auburn, Alabama State, Troy, UAB, all those other schools fit into this team, the Birmingham Stallions, again, that you might notice from the USFL. But this is this is all the colleges in Alabama if the Crimson Tide didn't exist. So all Crimson Tide players go here. Everyone else that went to school in Alabama goes here. You see, they're not the same, but they are big enough to be a team. And fairly competitive. I mean, I don't think they'll be bottom of the league, but they certainly will have to fight for the playoffs where the Crimson Tide seem to be a shoe-in to make the playoffs. The University of Illinois, sure, but all the schools in Illinois will stay right there and play under the Chicago Bears. You see zero X Factors and zero superstars, so not top-end talent coming out of the colleges in Illinois, but still a deep enough team to have a full roster. So there you go, Illinois fans. Chicago Bears and Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, the Arkansas Alligators. This represents not only Arkansas but also Missouri. So the Mizzou Tigers and Arkansas Razorbacks, the big draws there. But there are some other teams as well. Arkansas State, of course, and some others. But that's their team right there. One X Factor, two superstars. Sixth in rushing. It's not coming to mind who the running back is, but I think they have some good run blocking offensive linemen. Lots of money to work with, but again, that won't matter that much in this league. So, anyways, I'm rambling here, but that's what you can do. It's just the thing you can do with Team Builder now is bring all kinds of ideas. I mean, there's a bunch of indoor football league teams, so you can kind of change it. Change the roster, maybe lower some of the ratings and stuff for if you want to create players. I mean, that's a lot of work, but it's something you could do. Indoor football league. I think on YouTube you'll see some other stuff. Doing indoor football, USFL, XFL teams. Bring all them in. Or if you want to do a regional or alumni type football, as I'm calling it, and you want to see who on, who's state, I guess, has the best colleges, you could certainly do this. So anyways, whatever you do with Madden 25, have fun. It is a pretty good game, and just this team builder allows you to the replayability because of team player is definitely better than some of the past Maddens. So for now, have a good time, and I might broadcast some games from this alimony alumni football league. But stay tuned and have a good one.